Hello everyone, my name is Jeanette and welcome to the diary of my adventures in knitwear design. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook and Ravelry as Jeanette Knits. This is episode number 2. If this is your first time here, usually I talk about the patterns that I've published or the patterns that I'm working on or other things in progress. If this is not your first time, I'm very glad to see you again. In this episode, I'll also add a couple of galleries towards the end to show off the work of the beautiful test knits for one of my patterns, as well as the shots I took during my visit to the Unravel Festival of Yarn. A lot has happened since the last time. I meant to film a couple of weeks ago, but then it was the same weekend as Unravel Festival and I had lost my voice completely, so I couldn't really talk. And then I meant to film again last weekend, but then my son got ill and I had to take him to the doctors, and so here we are 4 weeks later. I have published some patterns. Mostly they are additions to already existing patterns. It's just a new language. So the Not a Boring Sweater got a Russian edition added to it. I talked a lot about that sweater in my previous episode. It was my first ever published design. So if you would like to know more about it, I welcome you to watch the previous episode. Another pattern that had a new language added was the Headed in the Clouds sweater. It's a sweater that I'm wearing. It is actually a children's sweater that it's just slightly oversized, but as you can see, I'm an adult and I'm wearing it. So it's available in 8 sizes from 1-year-old to small adult. And the reason what inspired me to create this design was my son's first independent steps, which he took towards the end of his 10 months. And I was really happy. I thought, well done, son. Mostly because I thought now he can stand upright and I can take nice pictures he deserves to wear a custom made sweater in some special yarn. So I looked through my stash and I found a couple of DK weight skeins that I had bought from the West Green Loft yarns for a special occasion. It's a fairly interesting construction as it starts here at the on chest on front. And then it's worked upwards over the shoulders. There's some short rows to shape the shoulder slopes, and then worked down to the same height and joined to work in the round down to the bottom, ending with a hem. And then the sleeves are picked up around armholes, and finally the neckline is added last. This was the very, very first version. I love this colorway. It's called Driftwood. But after I had made it, my daughter and I ended up visiting Loop London for the first time for me, despite having lived here for 6 years. And it was supposed to be just a visit to see what's there and what it's like. But of course, I cannot just go into a yarn shop and come out without anything. So I decided that we'll buy some yarn for my daughter to make her a matching sweater. And she looked everywhere for a DK weight yarn that she would like, but it either wasn't enough or it was just a little bit too much money, or not the quantity that was needed, or she just didn't like it, and we almost gave up. But then we saw a beautiful Madeline Tosh lace weight. And it occurred to me that we could just create a DK weight or similar kind of thickness by doing what a lot of people are already doing, that is holding two strands together. And we found a nice kid silk mohair from Bien Aimee in ash. So the whitish merino and the very dark mohair creates this very unique color. So yeah, this is the largest size that I'm wearing. My daughter wanted extra long sleeves, and as it's worked top down, it's quite easy to adjust. The trouble here was the interpretation of what ages to put against each size, because all the children around the world are so different, and some of my testers who intended to make this sweater for their children ended up wearing it themselves because they hadn't realized how big it actually would be. So my lesson learned is to just perhaps really make a note to pay attention to the finished object chest circumference instead of blindly looking at the age stated. I had initially picked a really stupid name for it, but then my daughter suggested this one, and it was perfect because in one of the finished shots, my son actually looks like his head is thoughtfully in the clouds, and because he just started walking, he is closer to the clouds relatively. And if you really, really want the top textured part, can resemble a sort of cloudy thing. Another pattern that I don't necessarily consider as my self-published pattern, but it is just a Ravelry project notes that contains the pattern for a sweater in just this one size, is another sweater for my son. It's a color work yoke in worsted weight. It's quite a long story behind this one. So why don't I start from the beginning? I dedicated this year to be the year where I explore colors in my knitting, because until now I had usually worked with just a single color, focusing more on the textures, and I had stayed away from stranded color work because of some crazy bad experiences at school, I guess. So yeah, I just knew that I wasn't good at it, so I didn't touch it. But this year is the year when I force myself to slowly get into it. And I had decided that the best way to do that would be to get working on a large project. And I think it was because I was watching some of the fruity knitting podcasts, and I noticed that some of the works in progress were from Mary Wallin, and I, at the same time, she published this book. Actually, it wasn't even published. I pre-ordered it because I really liked some of the designs in here. And I was going to knit one. The problem is that all of these are supposed to be knit flat in pieces and sewn together, and I thought that why don't I add an extra challenge to myself and and convert it to be knitted in the round, and also practice steeking, which I have never to this day really done. And I attended a steeking workshop to get over the kind of fear that I don't know why I had, but I'm sure others can understand that cutting your knitting isn't necessarily the easiest of feelings. So yeah, I was on my way to create one of these, and I calculated in my head the amount of yarn I would have to buy just to get all the colors in, and it was sounding a little bit pricey. So I thought, why don't I try some things with the yarn that I already have, and I made a swatch. And you can see here my swatch starts quite wide and then it goes narrower and narrower, and I was just experimenting with random colors to see what they look like when put together. Yeah, obviously I wasn't ready to start the sweater because of the tension problems and not knowing how to hold the yarns. But at the same time, after finishing this 8 rows, I guess, pattern and getting up here, these ornaments there felt really foreign. And being Latvian, I felt like I'm cheating on my culture, and I didn't want to. Especially because we're filthy rich with all sorts of signs and symbols from our huge mitten knitting traditions. So I decided to postpone this work and create my own. So yeah, I decided to try to use Latvian signs and symbols instead. And I had been given this very peculiar little book by my grandma a few Christmas ago, and it was just in my shelf because I didn't really get any kind of I didn't get a chance to really explore it until I decided to do color work. And the story behind this book is why it has like a homemade cover with duct tape is that it's called the Latvian ornament ABC. That's my translation, it could be wrong. And it was published in Riga in 1939, but because of the Russian occupation and the Soviet Union, it was considered as too much too Latvian, and it was put in it was one of the publications that was put away in a room to be destroyed in a library where my grandma worked, and she risking her career and all sorts of other trouble that she could get in, she kind of saved it from being destroyed and kept it and then passed it on to me. And it's full of all these kind of signs that one can use in knitting, in cross stitch, in whatnot. So yeah, so I picked up a few ornaments that I wanted to try, and then swatched a little bit, and then I decided that I actually don't have. Then I decided that I should probably stick to the same type of yarn across. So I ordered a lot of practice yarn, and after the second swatch, made a decision that instead of messing about with too many swatches, why don't I just start working on the cardigan? And so I cast on, and here it is. My first really proper color work. Use yoke with stick planned in the middle. So yeah, I consider this to be a giant swatch, and there will not be a pattern for it, but I am getting better and better at stranded as I work through it. I did actually try a million gazillion different ways to hold yarn, which seems to be quite the biggest problem for me. Is how to control the tension so that all stitches look the same. I tried to learn the English way of knitting because I'm a continental knitter. So I tried to learn the English way of knitting and try and use one yarn over the right hand and the other over the left hand, and that didn't happen for me. I had ordered a knitting thimble that is a little, don't have it here, like a little thing you put on your index finger, and it has yarn guides that you can put through, and I tried with that, but I even developed a cramp because I couldn't really control the tension on both strands equally, and I was unable to knit for half a day. And that was harsh. So in the end, I just returned to the very, very basic. I'm just gonna hold one strand in one hand and change it whenever I need to. Eventually, I picked up another couple of tricks, such as if there is only one stitch of a certain color, then I will do kind of a throw off it, and without changing the yarn on my left hand. But anyway, yeah, I've obviously still got a long way to go, but I am gonna be glad if something wearable comes out of this. I am slowly churning away. I am in my mind pondering about the kind of button band and neck band I want to add. So that's all still fluid. But yeah, it's quite a long piece of work. And at one point I wanted a little bit of quicker returns of my color work practice. And I also had a Knit Crate January yarn unused. It was a worsted weight. And they had two skeins, and one was this kind of natural beige, and one was multicolored that matches the beige. So I thought I will two birds, one stone. Use up some of my stash before the next Knit Crate arrive, and also practice color work with thicker yarn and get a wearable thing quicker. So yeah, I thought that I could probably find some, I can put these together in a sweater, and I can find some contrast color to do the color work in the yoke from different yarns in my stash. And so I looked at the colored yarn, and I saw that there's a bit of purple, there's a bit of mustard going on, and I happen to have a bit of purple yarn from forever ago that was DK weight, so I needed to add something to it to make a matching weight. And I also had this mustardy thing from forever ago, which is lace weight, and I thought I had discovered yeah, I had figured it all out. So I started the yoke, and it was looking okay, and yeah, it was. I mean, it's not my favorite yarn weight to work with, so you can see that all the imperfections are magnified, but yeah, as a training project I wasn't too worried. But then I started fading in the multicolored one, and after a few rows I realized that I don't really feel like it's going well, that it's gonna look good, but I ignored those signals, and I just kept pressing on because it's such a quick knit. I was almost done, I was near the hem, and I finished it, and I thought I'll just put it away for a day and come back and look at it the next day and see if I like it or not. And I definitely didn't. So yeah, I ripped out I don't know, it was just not looking great, and there's this orange that isn't anywhere else at the top that I hadn't factored in, and it was too much. It was taking away a lot from the yoke pattern. So I thought that I need to find some other solutions because I didn't have matching worsted weight, and I didn't really want to use this darker one right away. So I looked through my stash again, and I found a little bit of this DK left, and I found a little bit of pink lace weight that I could put together, and still the same mustardy one, and eventually created this sort of fade with colors that I never thought I ever would put together. I mean, yeah, if anyone told me that I will be working with these two colors in one project, I would absolutely think they're bonkers. But here we are. I mean, it's not actually that bad, and yeah, it's a thing my son can wear. And as I said, I wrote down the pattern for just this size. It's about 2 years, 2-year-old size. Yeah, I have to be careful with the ages. But it's for a toddler in my Ravelry project page. And continuing with color work, around the same time I noticed a call for test knitters for a sock pattern by a Latvian designer, Mrs. Diedātāja. And they're called watercolor socks. And I thought this is perfect because I actually need socks for my husband. I'm not really a big sock knitter. I have made like this. This is and another pair are the only 2 pairs I've made in the last 20 years, I swear. But whenever we go somewhere in the car, his feet are cold, and so he cranks up the heat, and the rest of us in the car are just dying, boiling. So I told him I will make him a pair of woolen socks so that we can all happily take a road trip somewhere. And so this test call came along at the right time. I was interested in practicing color work. I didn't want to calculate sock things or or buy a sock pattern. And so I had just been to I'd just been to Waltham Abbey Wool Show, where I picked up these yarns, and I think the top one is from Dusty Dimples Sock Mini, and the darker one is from Truly Hooked Yak Sock. Started working away. I got down to the heel, and my husband tried them on, and he could barely fit his foot through because I wasn't really thinking about the floats and the tension too much. So I had to rip it all back and redo from the cuff down, and think about the length of the floats more consciously. But that was a great practice. So yeah, the pattern's really cool, easy to follow. There is absolutely no problems there. So it was a great quick sock knit. My color work stories don't end there. I have another project that I actually started after my son's sweater, but it is very quick knit, so it's already done, and the pattern is written, and the test is in going full speed. It's a cowl, and again I'm using Latvian ornaments, so the central section is featuring the sign for moon, and this in particular is the moon cross, because you can see the moon in 4 places to signify the 4 phases of the moon, and it's also the cycle of life. My knowledge of this is very, very limited, so yeah, I might not tell the whole truth, but I know that around the edges this is a sign of a broom of the goddess of destiny, or Laima, and it sweeps away all that's evil and bad, and if you wear this sign it will bring you luck or something like that. I mean, if you believe it. I just believe that it's very pretty, and I really enjoyed knitting it. Traditionally, I believe the moon was worn mostly by men, but in this gender neutral age, who cares about that? This yarn I got at Unravel Festival, which I will talk about a little bit more later. It is a really, really soft alpaca and rose blend. I came across the Border Mill is called, where I got it from, their stand, and I touched a color work cowl like this. Well, not like this, but another one. And I was expecting it to be woolly and quite coarse, like woolly color work, but it was the softest thing. And I saw that it's made from the yarn. They had very, very many different shades, so I spent quite a bit trying to choose colors, and I picked the kind of golden one and the blackish one and a red one, which I'm still keeping for something else. And yeah, so when I got home, I just couldn't wait to start something, and because I didn't have a lot of it, cowl seemed like a perfect thing. So I finished the outer layer. Like I didn't initially know that it was gonna be a double layered cowl like it is, but after finishing the first layer, I think you can see the drape here is just unbelievable. The yarn's quite heavy, so yeah, after putting it on, blocking it and putting it on, it completely collapsed and you couldn't see anything. All I could see was the floats of the inside, so I knew that I had to have a second layer or a lining for it. But I had already bound off the stitches, but it didn't stop me picking them up and knitting an inside. You can see here I ran out of the yarn, so I just added a bit of 100% alpaca that I had in a similar weight, You can't really tell. I mean, it's also a great stash busting project, and incredibly nice to rewarding to knit, because the drawing is just very pretty. I called it on my Ravelry project page, I called it the bling bling cowl, because the yellow bits remind me of gold. Test is going on for this in English. There won't be a pattern in Latvian, but a very kind girl, lady from Spain, Gemma, offered to translate it in Spanish. So there is a Spanish version, and there will be an announcement for a test in Spanish if anyone who can speak Spanish would like to test this. Watch out for the announcement on Instagram or in my Ravelry group. Well, I have a couple more works in progress that I could probably talk about, and one of them is another pair of socks. It turns out that I'm a really loose knitter, so on the smallest set of needles, these are a little bit too loose for my husband's liking, and he has big feet. So I am knitting him an alternative pair, just pure vanilla with French heel, trying different heels here now. And this yarn is another one I picked up at Unravel Festival from the Knitting Shed. I don't know if you can fully see and appreciate the beautiful outcome that it gives. There's so many colors, and there's a little bit of red, a little bit of mossy green, a little bit of silvery white, and it reminds me of lingonberry picking in Latvia. So here is what lingonberries look like for those of you who might not have heard this term. But all those colors are in here, and unfortunately I am stuck with the one sock done, a one to go situation. And the needles that I'm using for this are currently taken by another project, which is a bit lengthier. And so I think I'm going to have to wait until I'm done with that to continue. And that said project lives in this pretty project bag that I got given to me by another podcaster, Guna, a todo punto, because I started a podcast on YouTube. That was really nice of her, and I love it because it goes with this project perfectly. There's like some pink bits. So this is the Blossoming Sweater by Unwind Knitwear, and I'm making it for Vicky from West Green Loft Yarns in her new luxurious cashmere base. And when she asked me if I could knit a sample for her, I cannot possibly imagine why would anyone say no, because okay, I have 6 whips, but one more or less doesn't make much difference. And I love working from other designer patterns because I always learn something new. So yeah, this is supposed to be on a 3.25 millimeter needles, but because I am ultra loose knitter, I had to go down 2 or 3, I don't know how many, but these are 2 millimeter to get the gauge that is required. So yeah, it's a new experience to knit a whole garment on 2 millimeter needles. But I'm not complaining because the yarn feels amazing. I love the colors, and the pattern itself or the design itself is really awesome. I think I don't know if you can see, but there's some stitching that is nothing like your usual knitting. It's pretty genius. I will say my jaw dropped the first time I read the instructions, but there's also a video, and after you do it once, it kind of makes sense and it's really enjoyable. And it's one of those really addictive things where you can't put it down until you've done the whole section. And then I couldn't wait to finish all the blank stockinette to get to the second part. And I've just got the hem ribbing and sleeves to do. Yeah, definitely an awesome pattern. I can't say that it's for beginners because it's mentioned you have to know how to do short rows, and also it uses some techniques assuming that you know what they're for. I thought I was a good knitter, but I had to ask in the forums for help for one of them. I mean, it was to do with color work, so I'm not feeling too bad because I'm such a novice color work knitter. I will forgive myself for not knowing how to fix a jog in the round. And now I know, and that's one of the new things that I learned. A new thing that I learned is this. This looks like a cable, but it isn't, and that's a cute stitch. And yeah, her way of doing increases is also new to me. I think I learned a way to do increases a while ago, and I just sort of stuck to it. Why would I need a new way? It's fine. My way is fine. But this in this pattern, it specifically recommends another way. So I looked it up, and it's actually a lot easier to do increases, and the look is just as invisible as with my traditional way that I used. So I think I will be not stealing. You can't really steal. This was created by someone who probably wants the technique to be used. So yeah, I will admit that these increases are now my preferred way of doing increases. And last but not least, why I love this pattern is because the stitches that she has created really inspired me to look at designing knitwear in a different way. Like I can kind of click that there's a way to draw things that no one's drawn yet, so I should experiment with that and create my own stitches. And yeah, watch this space. Last pattern in progress is a cardigan called Sage Cardi. I am due to start test as early as next week, I hope. But I will talk about this cardigan in a different episode because, yeah, there's quite a bit to say, and I've already covered a lot of content this time, and I've still got unravel bit to discuss. So I went to Unravel Festival with my friend Liene, and it was great to have a buddy to walk around and talk about things. Before I went in, I knew that I had to definitely visit 3 places. There is Vicky, and I had seen some really gorgeous new colorways that I wanted to get my hands on. There is the Knitting Shed, and I just always love to grab something from there. Their colors really speak to me. It's they're deep and dark and mysterious, and yeah, well, they're kind of my palette. And there was another shop, that 80 Skeins yarn shop, that is the only one in the UK that sells a Latvian wool. And of course I had to get me some because I hadn't tried it for years. So yeah, the plan was go around everywhere, take some photos with calm, collected mind, sit down, have some tea, go through the photos and marry things up with some potential projects, and then go and buy in a very targeted, controlled way. Yeah, it did not happen like that. The first stop was bathroom, and the downstairs one was out of order, so we kind of got shown a back doorway to the second floor, no, the first floor, and when we got out of the bathroom, we ended up in the room where the Latvian wool seller was, and yeah, already at that point it was quite overwhelming. Didn't know where to start, just dazed and confused for the first few minutes. This was my first Unravel festival, so yeah, I did not know what to expect. And yeah, we went to check out the Latvian wool, and my goodness, if you touch it, it is so coarse. It's like I had forgotten what real wool feels like after having worked with these merino and silk blends. And there was a lot of colorways that didn't really speak to me, so I had a bit of a difficult time choosing, but I knew that I had to go home with something, and I thought, okay, well, this is like, we still got lots of time, let's just walk around and come back to it later. Getting out of that room, I then saw West Green Loft yarns stand in the middle of the room, and yeah, I immediately went to see the colorway that I had, that I knew that I wanted to get my hands on for sweater quantities. In fact, it was Vicky who told me that Friday is the serious shopper day, that if you miss Friday, you risk not getting sweater quantities of the colors that you want. So yeah, we went on Friday, and with that kind of not fear, just to minimize the risk, I was looking for the colorway, but I ended up finding even a better one, because I think in my mind I had imagined it looked different than what it looked like in real life. So I found these blues color called Aurora, and it's a little bit darker than in the camera, but it is in my eye color. So yeah, this is gonna be something for me. I have a project in mind, so we'll see. Yeah, hopefully I'll get it on my needles soon. It's the same base as the blossoming sweater, so yeah, I already know it's gonna be a beautiful thing to knit. And so because I found this colorway, and I driven by this, I gotta have this or it won't be there, I made my first purchase, and with that the floodgate was sort of open, and all the plans of like being careful about what I buy went out the window from that point. Yeah, we were just kind of wandering around, totally no idea where we were, because it was quite packed. I had a big bag. There was nowhere to kind of stand and check the guide and get your bearings. I mean, I couldn't find the spot. I just constantly was in the way of people, apologizing for bumping into them with my huge bag. But then again, if you didn't go there with a huge bag, what were you doing? I think the next bit that I stumbled on was the border mill, where I already talked about how I was taken away by touching the alpaca rose, and I had to have some. So I had already given myself permission to just impulse buy and think later. So I bought 3 skeins of that. Beautiful, beautiful color. Yeah, after about 45 minutes of waddling around, I did look at the guide and I realized there's actually a huge main hall that we haven't even been to. And there was a Countess Ablaze stall, and I wanted to try getting my hands on the Brexit colorway, but obviously that was all gone. And right next to it was Kettle Yarn Company. I recognized her from the Socks on the Beach meetup, and I mean, they got me at ethical, and they also had some very beautiful colorways. So I couldn't just walk past without making a purchase. I got these. The yarn is called Islington. It's British superwash blue faced Leicester and silk in fingering weight. And I do not have a project in mind, but I think it will be color work, something. I'm constantly planning things, and I know that I have enough for something sizey there. And after that, I think I had already exhausted all my introvert's willpower to not react to overstimulus, and I just wanted to sit down and eat something and drink something and have a little bit of a rest. I honestly don't understand how people who are there with work can survive 1, let alone 3 days. That for me, an hour and a half already feels super overwhelming. And so we went to look for a place to sit and rest our feet, and there was no places anywhere. Eventually I just said, because there were 2 of us, I said, I will stand in the queue to get us some something to eat, and why don't you help find a place for us? So yeah, my friend was on the lookout for any free spaces while I went to get a couple of vegan sausage rolls. That was really nice, actually. They were delicious, and I didn't expect there to be catering for my plant-based dietary requirements. Very great surprise. So all went really well. We got a couple of spaces in a kind of a corner that we had to squish past quite a few people to get. And and then best moment there was my friend made me really proud. As we were sitting down opposite us, 2 ladies came with huge pieces of very tasty looking cakes, and then the 2 of them had seats so they could sit down, but the 3rd lady came and joined them, and she was sort of eating her cake and standing up, and I was thinking to myself, oh no, I wish there was something I could do. But my friend didn't even think twice. She had stood up, she has squished past all those other people, she had found a chair and brought it to the 3rd lady. And yeah, that was like the cherry on their cake for me as well. Anyway, knitters are all amazing people. I think the only thing that we went to get after we had sat down was I went back to the 80 Skeins yarn shop to pick a Latvian wool colorway. Even though it's really coarse, I am told that something ultra magical happens when you wash it, and I just can't wait to try. And then I also went to the knitting shed and picked out 1 skein of sock yarn that I already cast on the same evening when we got home. Now about the main reason why I actually went to Unravel Festival. It wasn't just that I wanted to go to Unravel Festival or that I needed yarn, because I clearly don't need more yarn. I had participated in the design competition organized by Unravel. It was the first time they did something like that, and you could submit your designs, pictures, patterns, and they had shortlisted 9, and I was shortlisted. And then public voting started for about 8 days. People could vote once a day for their favorite or multiple patterns. And at the end, a winner was chosen, and that was my design for another cowl. The winner was also printed in the Unravel Festival guide. The story behind this design is a very, sometimes you see a diagram which indicates the road to success isn't just a straight line. It's squigglies up and downs, and that's exactly how this cowl came about. I was gifted this yarn, or given this yarn as a collaboration for a completely different purpose. It was another design competition that required fiery colors, and I already then I received beautiful orange and 2 skeins of orange merino mohair, really luxuriously feeling yarn, and hand painted. They look really beautiful in skeins. And so, but the moment I started knitting with them, I just couldn't get it to look better than it looks in the skeins. So yeah, from already the first try, I was sort of in a not so enthusiastic about my outcomes. But regardless, I did submit 4 ideas using this yarn to that competition, and I had said to Sandra, who gifted this, who is the dyer behind this, that whatever happens, I will make a pattern. I think I approached her asking whether she had colorways like that, because I didn't have anything at all remotely useful for that color palette in my stash at the time. And she looked through a few things, and she could find these, and she immediately sent them to me, and that was the only way I could actually make the deadline for that submission call. And none of those 4 ideas were picked, but that's fine. I wasn't too proud of any of them in particular, but as I had said, that whatever happens, I will make a pattern for these yarns. And I found that the Unravel Festival's design competition was the perfect opportunity to give this another go. And I think I spent the New Year's evening and even late at night just trying all sorts of different stitches on this, because this was my main hurdle. I couldn't, my texture, full of texture and cabling kind of design style wasn't really friendly with this type of yarn. And I had stuck to an idea, and that it was going to be a shawl. And the competition had a rule that you couldn't use more than 1 or 2 skeins. So I thought, perfect, I can make a triangular shawl and stop whenever I run out of the maximum amount is reached. So I was just knitting it up. I was almost halfway through, and something didn't feel right, but I kind of ignored the signals. And then I decided to ask my husband for some feedback. And usually he's very supportive, and he'll say nice things. But this time he just looked at it and was like, it just looks like you've made a lot of mistakes. It just looks like full of mistakes. And I think that was when I thought, okay, fine, this is really not my cup of tea. I cannot make this yarn look more beautiful. I ripped out the whole thing, and I put it kind of away because I decided I wasn't gonna partake. Like I needed more, I don't know, color exploration training or something. And but I was feeling like I had lost that giving up is not something that I do. So I picked another yarn, and that was completely blank and white, light in color, so I could go all out with all the textures I could do. And I started working on another idea, and halfway the idea I really fully read the requirements, and it hit me that no matter how hard I try, I will definitely need to use more yarn than the Unravel Festival allowed, even for like the smallest size of that idea. So another kind of downer. And yeah, I was really not gonna, I was just not bothering. And I was trying to find ways to tell myself that it's okay to miss a submission call once in a while if you're really struggling. It's not a school work. No one's gonna grade you or tell you that you've done a bad job. And it's just me, you know. Until I accidentally, not related to knitting in the slightest, saw a couple of people having a very lively conversation where neither was more dominant than the other. So it wasn't like an interview. They were both having full personality shining through and kept. And it was by a fire, and the fire reminded me of this yarn. And I kept thinking, like, that sparked another wave of ideas. And I thought that why am I fighting with this yarn? I should just let this yarn speak for itself in plain stockinette and use this one for the textures. I mean, in hindsight, obviously that's what I should have started with, but I had to go through all these hoops of 18 different approaches until I finally got to the one, and that was the 19th swatch. No, actually, I don't think I even swatched. I just said, that's it. I'm starting. I'm casting on all the stitches, and let's give this a go. And yeah, I don't have the sample with me because it was supposed to be exhibited at Unravel Festival. And we did try and find where the exhibit was, but it turned out that on the day when we were there, due to all the rush and it being the first day, the exhibit hadn't quite made to be prepared. It was to be of all the shortlisted designs. So yeah, the design, the actual sample is still at Farnham, I think. Yeah, so that was a fun experience, and definitely a proud moment seeing my design published in the Unravel Festival Yarn Guide, Festival Guide, Festival of Yarn Guide. I am now working on a digital version that I can publish also in Ravelry. In Ravelry, it appears as already added. That was a requirement, but it's not actually possible to purchase or download it because the PDF isn't there. And now that I think I have the right to self-publish this design, I am working on getting it there, and in the next couple of weeks that will happen. There's another piece I'm working on in the background because I got news from one of the publications about my submission that those news were good. So I am working on it behind the scenes. I'm still waiting to hear back from another one. And if I don't hear back in March, I will assume that has not been my time, and I will pull it out and show you how far I got. And that's quite an exciting idea that I would like to continue right away as well. I was gonna submit an idea or a few to the Making Stories submission call, but the mood board is really a challenge for me. Designing for a specific theme and getting inspiration from that is really challenging for some reason. I get inspired by yarn or stitch patterns or people wearing clothes, not by, oh, there's a butterfly, I think I could make something that is inspired by the butterfly. I don't know, strange mind. Last time I talked about a meetup shawl. There has been absolutely no progress on that. Probably until the next meetup, which I'm hoping I will go to at the end of this month. And I will take that with me. And yeah. Talking about meetups, I am thinking of starting a virtual knitting meetup, name to be determined, using a conferencing platform called Zoom. I have run a few like that with Latvian knitters, and it's a lot of fun, especially for those who are stuck in places without much knitting culture going on. So yeah, it's a great way to get together and have some dedicated couple hours of knitting with other people from around, it's been Europe thus far, but it could be around the world. So yeah, if it's something you'd like to try, watch out for an announcement on my Instagram or Facebook page. And if you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to my channel. Every subscriber keeps me motivated to continue these recordings. I'll let you enjoy some finished works of test knits from the Heading Cloud sweater, and I will see you next time. Bye!